You are a white Christian. You're Hindu, Indian,
Yes.
right? You're also life partners.
Oh, yeah.
You are very triggering to the internet.
Especially on TikTok and Reels, people are brutal because people love to hate on what they don't understand.
What made you guys start to share? How do you make it work?
If you're a Hindu, you marry Hindu. This isn't possible. I was trying to look for answers, and I couldn't find anything.
Same-sex marriages, that's now more accepted. Biracially, there's obviously some triggers there, but different religions is still so triggering.
A huge comment we get today still is, so which one of you is converting? First off, it's none of your business. The people who, from my community, oh, well, you obviously don't believe, you obviously aren't Christian, you are such a failure to Christianity.
Family tensions and all this stuff.
Like, what does your family think of you?
That's when I was like, this is possible, first of all. And why am I letting everything around me control the way I do things?
If you look at it, actually, Hinduism and Christianity have similar values.
A lot of religions have similar values.
And the thing is, people don't understand that.
How did it happen? He went viral, then you're like, I want to marry the guy?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Like, drop my panties for him,
exactly.
everything.
From a different religion, it doesn't matter. But he
Nothing
has
matters.
followers. That is currency.
We have the same sense of humor, like stupid humor.
What is something that annoys you about your relationship?
So, I mean, it's hard to pick. There are so many. No, I'm just kidding. It didn't even come to be until after we had our first argument.
What was the first argument?
He was jealous because
Our relationship was so hard. The annoying thing is how
As a fundamentalist Mormon, having 5 parents and 44 brothers and sisters was the norm for Calvin Wayman.
Today I'll be spending a day with Calvin, an ex-cult member.
Calvin is on shit. The thing I love about the show is just even in the name, culture, emphasis on the word cult.
I have friends who grew up in like real cults. We had somebody on the show who has 44 siblings and 4 moms because he grew up in a polygamous compound. When I look at that, I'm like, okay, that's a cult.
And it's not just going to be heavy all the time.
So his dad was Nick Cannon. Is that what you're saying? Nick Cannon was his dad? Is that what you're saying right there?
You had more siblings than there were presidents for a while.
Holy shit. You're right.
We're going to have a bunch of guests on the show. I'm into creativity, comedy, entertainment. I want this podcast to be the creative expression for my story and for my perspectives on life.
Oh my God! God! Oh my!
Welcome to my studio, Half Past Chai.
Yeah, hi.
How are you
Hi.
liking New York, by the way?
it's amazing.
it's the best. It's cozy is how I would describe it, for sure.
New York or this studio?
This and
Both.
New York itself, I say.
You actually feel like New York is cozy.
Yeah, because if you think about it, we're from Indiana, very far apart. Just to go to a grocery store, you're going to drive 10 minutes, right? And so it's different. It's just a lot closer. Everything, it feels cozy.
What about Indiana is like uniquely Indiana? You're like, only Indiana, you can get this.
Well, it's not uniquely to Indiana, but it's a Midwest thing. It's probably cornfields.
That's
like
what I was going to say.
It's cornfields. Like everything. Like we have a cornfield behind us. It's just what it is.
Okay. Well, the reason I wanted to have you guys on is I call you troublemakers on your Instagram. You are very triggering
Oh yeah.
to the internet. So you are a white Christian. You're Hindu, Indian, right?
Yes. Yep.
And you're also life partners.
Oh yeah.
We are.
So that fucks people up on multiple sides, on the racial side and the religion side.
Yeah.
Right? What made you guys start to want to share that as a, instead of like hiding behind it being like, yeah, who gives a fuck, and actually making content around it?
Well, I thought it was important because whenever I got into this relationship, I was trying to look for answers and I couldn't find anything. And so when I broke up with Hallie at one point because our relationship was so hard, like family tensions and all this stuff, that's when I was like, wait, why am I letting this control? Like, why am I letting everything around me control the way I do things? So I started looking up Reddit, started looking up all these things like interracial couples, and saw that other people were able to do it. But there wasn't anything specifically that I saw was like our specific situation of interfaith and interracial.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? Let's share our story because we made it work. So why can't others?
Yeah, first off, thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Just want to say that. This is awesome. Very cozy setup. A lot of vibes going on tonight. Yeah, I guess, I don't know. We weren't really always so keen on sharing our story. We weren't ever determined to be like, oh, we're going to be influencers. We're going to be that interracial couple. We're going to show off our love to everybody and show that it can work. It was more so, you've been on YouTube for like 10 years.
Yeah.
And you've always been posting. But then when I started to come into the picture, people were like, oh, you're Indian and she's white. How does that even work? And then once TikTok became a thing and then Reels became a thing, we just started feeding into that. And then we just kept getting more and more traction on our stuff because it's not been done a ton up until the last, like maybe 5 or 6 years.
What seems to give people the greater pause? Is it the being in relationship as a biracial couple, or is it more of the religious aspect?
I would say we get more comments about me being Indian, her being white, but the ones that trigger the most people are the fact that we're both different religions. So like the one person who'll comment something about like, oh, you guys are different religions, that will have like 100 comments underneath it battling both sides. So from what I've seen is that's the area that people are more interested in for sure.
Because we were talking the other night, we were hanging out, you said that, I think it was you, Hallie, you said that you noticed that it affects both sides.
It does.
Like you get comments, say more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the thing that we started to notice is it's not the people who, like us, are more so open-minded and willing to hear other sides and also, not start shit for no reason. Like, I don't understand why our comments section are always at war. It's more so the people that are on either side of the extremes, right? Like one person believes very, very, very strongly in Hinduism and one person is very, very, very Christian and they are just battling. And then also the people who, from my community, like people who are Christian are like, oh, well, you obviously don't believe in what you preach. Like you are such a failure to Christianity as a religion, or like you obviously aren't Christian. Like what does your family think of you? And then the same thing for him as well regarding Hinduism.
Yeah, I think when it comes to Hinduism, it's always been like, it doesn't matter like the religion part of it. It's like a way of living. So when it comes to the people that comment about the Hinduism side of things, it's just like, this isn't possible. Like they don't have that open mindset. It's like if you're a Hindu, you marry Hindu. Just like with the Christianity side, I feel like on the Christianity side, there's a lot more like, how do I say? Like there's just more verbiage that they are able to like pull from, like the Bible. They're able to pull like, hey,
they'll pull verses on me and they're like, thou shalt not do this. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Stop.
And it always comes down to somebody saying, oh, but they tell you to love thy neighbor or whatever, whoever it may be. And then there's another person who's going to be like, oh, but you're unequally
yoked.
Yeah,
that's like the biggest comment.
Unequally yoked? What does unequally yoked mean?
I still am having a hard time understanding myself, but we like looked it up one time.
It's like there's multiple interpretations to it, but what I've heard is that it means like if you marry a non-Christian, you yourself are
unequally yoked.
Exactly. Yeah. But it never says
it sounds like an egg.
Like you're unequally involved in your religion, maybe. Exactly. Is like you equally don't care about it. Is like you act like you care, but you actually don't, and you're not involved in your religion.
I'm fascinated by this as a thing, as a topic in society, in culture, because we've done so much work in, same-sex marriages. That's now more accepted, and biracially, there's obviously some triggers there, but this whole connection to different religions is still so triggering. Now, one thing too is you're still, like when I first met you guys, when I first came across your content, I was thinking that you were raised Christian, you were raised Hindu, and now you're no longer practicing and that's what makes it work. Mm-hmm. But after talking to you the other night, my understanding is you still consider yourself Christian. You still consider yourself Hindu.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that a problem for you guys? And like, how do you make it work?
When it first came up as a topic of discussion, it was a problem.
Absolutely a problem.
And I remember
who had the bigger issue with it?
Me. Definitely
Oh,
me.
okay.
Well, because like you just stated, I was brought up Christian, and so my parents aren't quote strict Christians, but in churches, typically ones that are more traditional, which is one that I always grew up going to, they preach, like marry into the same religion, not to
Yes.
simplify, but quote, it will be easier, right? Like it just makes things easier if you marry somebody like Christian, marry Christian, Catholic, Catholic, Hindu, Hindu. Like it just makes things easier. And I think that's pretty universal across religions. Like they always say, like maybe marry into your religion because it will make things easier one day so you don't have to disagree about the hard things.
Was it ever about, I don't know, we're the one true religion? And so if you're on the outside of it, then if you're getting somebody on the outside, then they're going to pull you out of the one true religion. Was there any of that in the thought process?
For me, I would say, it's not like, oh, we're the one true religion, we dominate everything, right? It was more so like, oh, and it's like a huge comment DM that we get today still is like, oh, well, you don't practice really your values because you're with somebody who doesn't preach those same values. But like, it's interesting enough, if you look at it, actually Hinduism and Christianity have similar values, just formed in different ways.
A lot of religions have similar values.
And people don't, but the thing is, people don't understand that, and they don't care to understand that, which is sad.
I totally agree with that. In fact, one of my passion projects as I started to leave my faith and explore the world is start to compile a list of values, because there's something really interesting I noticed in my faith where I grew up fundamentalist Mormon. I knew a lot of other fundamentalist Mormon churches. We were more contentious with our neighboring fundamentalist religions than we were with Hindus or Christians or Buddhists or any other religions. And it took me a while to realize this, but there's something in the human nature where some of our greatest conflicts come from those most like us, which is fascinating. And so, but here's the thing. I thought we were so different from everyone else. It actually wasn't until I was almost leaving and I had some friends from Columbus, Ohio, visiting my small town, and we're driving through, and we drive through this other town called Colorado City, Arizona, that's a neighboring religion or a neighboring cult. People know Warren Jeffs. It's his church, and they're like, so how do they believe? And I'm telling them how they believe, and like, so they sound really similar to you, like, and I was like, oh no, we're like totally different. But that was the light bulb for me of what you two just said, of like, there are values that are similar to each other, and we will fight each other over like we have different names and we're like different ways of describing something, but sometimes we're talking about the same thing. No?
Yeah. And people just don't realize it. They just don't get it.
For me, I started to realize this in college. Like, I had a friend who was very like faithful to being a Christian. He loved debating me, and I loved debating back, and he was very respectful about everything. And because of that, I was able to like discover things about Christianity, things about my own religion that I looked up. I was like, oh my God, I didn't even know that. And so when I started looking and debating, and I started to figure out, okay, there's some similarities here, but there's also like a few fundamental differences. For example, Adam and Eve is something that is believed in the Christian faith. Evolution is believed in the Hindu faith. That's a big fundamental difference, right? But when you start to look all the way back, evolution in Hinduism is also started from like two people, technically, right? So they evolve into these two people. And so the stories eventually align at some point. And not all of them, but a lot of them. And from that, like from having those debates, from having those discussions, I was able to be like, this is possible, first of all. And the morals that we share are identical. So I never found a problem once I fully grasped that concept. The only problem that I would have is when people start to mention things like, oh, are you going to convert for her? That is when I was like, gosh, that brings up a whole nother topic of like, why am I not willing to convert, right? Why is that decision in the back of my head? If we're so similar, why don't I just convert? But like in like my heart, like I feel like this is the way I grew up. This is what I believe in. And because of that, I feel I just have this internal thing saying, this is what I want to practice. This is what I believe in.
It's your authenticity.
Exactly.
And you're sticking to that. And then how about you? Like, Hallie, do you ever have feelings of, will I convert and trade religions from your belief system to his?
Well, definitely people question that, right? They always are like, so which one of you is converting? Like, that's people's first go-to. They always want to know who's converting. When are you going to do it? Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, first off, it's none of your business. Second of all, neither one of us wants to do that. We are both very, very solid in what we believe in and our fundamental values. And we understand that. That's the thing, is we've been able to communicate that to each other. And that's the biggest thing also that people don't understand in interfaith relationships, is that you have to be able to have that open-mindedness and open line of communication between each other, because it won't work. Because two people from different religions ultimately are going to bash heads if you're not able to talk about it. Yeah. So definitely that's one of the biggest misunderstandings.
Is like extra important.
It sounds like cliche, but it's true. If you don't communicate those things, I mean, obviously we've had quite a few arguments about this in the past when it was a roadblock for us. Since we've been able to talk about it and not get frustrated about it, because you're just brought up thinking that everything that you know is right, everything in your family is right.
I don't know. Do you guys have like we're going to bounce around a little bit, but do you have like a pattern of conflict resolution you've noticed you've landed on with each other when you come to disagreements? Because like people disagree all the time in relationships. If you're going to disagree, and sometimes it's over either little things or major things, you two have what some would call major differences, but you're not. There's like common values, common morals, and that sort of thing. But you're also going to see the world differently, which AKA two Christians, men and women, are also going to see the world very differently.
Absolutely.
And what I love about this is it's just highlighting, like, just accepting that in a way. But when you do come to that, like when you notice you're disagreeing, is there a way that you talk through it? Do you like try to force the other person to see your way, and like, this is how, like, what do you do? Is it who screams louder?
I mean, that's the epitome of our podcast, right? Like, we talk so much about relationship advice, how to deal with arguments, how we've had arguments and learned from them. I think the biggest thing is understanding, one, that we have different communication styles, right? He's very... The environment that you came from and versus the environment that I came from, very different. I come from a very passive family. Like, we don't talk about things. Like, we just let things slide and forget about it. And now as an adult, I realize how damaging that is and how that's been hard for me to come to terms with. It's because I would just let things go, push it under the rug. Oh, it doesn't really matter. It didn't really hurt my feelings that bad. Like, invalidating myself.
People pleaser.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's terrible. I hate being a people pleaser. I work on it all the time of not being a people pleaser. Because it's a curse. It's terrible. And then you, on the other hand.
Yeah, in my family, we like fought. We had physical fights. We had verbal fights. Like, me and I have
Did you punch your mom?
I never
Did you?
never even thought of doing that because my mom would kill me. But I have 3 older sisters. And because of that, we had fights. We had a lot of fights, and we learned how to argue. And when an argument came up, we would argue right then and there until it was resolved. And we would not leave each other's sight. It doesn't matter if the other person was crying. It doesn't matter. We would fix the problem. And so now...
That is not how I was raised.
Yeah, same.
I feel like we have like a middle area of that where it's like, I am the person who's like, let's solve this right now. Hallie's like, I need a little bit at a time. So she'll go, maybe, I don't give her a lot of time because
no, he does not.
It's so hard for me to like not resolve a problem. And so, but I still am able to give her enough space to where she can go think for a second. Like, we had an argument once. She went into the closet of our
Oh, it sounds so
room.
depressing. No, I went to go fold laundry and calm
Fold
down.
laundry, yes.
Okay.
So fold laundry, calm down, and then maybe 20 minutes later, I'd be like, okay, I'm so sorry. I can't believe like I brought this stupid topic up again. Let's figure this out. We fold laundry together. We talk about it. Boom. That was our conflict resolution.
Therapeutic, yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, we have 2 very different communication styles, and what we've learned is how we're able to manage that in finding a middle ground. And yes, I want to talk about it and I want to fix it, but give me just a little bit of time because I myself need to calm down. I don't want to get upset and just think too irrationally and speak before I've really had a chance to process how I'm actually feeling about the situation, not how you delivered that to me. Because a lot of it for me is about tone. It's always been that way. Like growing up, if somebody used a harsh tone for me, that was like the end of it for me. Like even if it wasn't a bad message, it's like if somebody said something sternly or raised their voice at me, I would shut down. And so when that happens in our relationship, that's been something that we've really had to work on because I hate when you raise your voice at me. And that's just like a childhood thing. I've always been that way.
Yeah.
Whereas you, on the other hand, always had, and nowadays.
So, well, just as a third party inside looking in, this is so fascinating because you're having to learn each other's communication styles because he's going to come at you to like, no, I want to solve the problem. And you're like, but the way I'm taking that tone is it's shutting me down. And so you're in a bind. So you had to discover that.
Yes.
In each other.
Took us a while and we never lived together until we got married. Very traditional, right? So we didn't discover these kinds of things until after marriage, which made it first year of marriage even more difficult than ever, I would say.
Well, and I just want to point out the fact too that we lived at home all throughout college. I think maybe we talked about this the other night, but we went to school in our city in Indianapolis and we commuted from where we lived in our hometown. So we did not live with anybody besides our parents up until I was 22. We got married in 2021. And so we got married back then. And then we moved in with each other and realized what it was like to live with an actual roommate who also was my husband at this time.
Yeah.
All these things are happening and our worlds are merging. And it was just a crazy time for us.
Yeah.
You made me, I'll put a pin in it. I have questions about parents, both of you.
Absolutely.
Again, going back to when you guys met, I'm just curious, were you to each other's firsts interracially?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so then how did that happen for you? Did you always grow up? Because if you're your first, like that surprises me a little bit. It's not like it's like, oh, I always knew I was going to marry a white Christian girl, and you weren't always like, I always know I was going to marry an Indian Hindu guy. Like that wasn't your thing.
Well, actually, no, I did have a girlfriend before Hallie, but I mean, it was a very short relationship, but that is...
We don't count it. It doesn't really count.
But it is something to bring up because there was a discussion there as well where her parents came to me and were like, you can't date her until you convert. They were very Christian. Like,
wow.
Like dating, too.
Very Christian.
Just to date, you have to convert.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so they came up to me and said that, and that's when I got scared. I was like,
pause. Okay, we're having great conversation here. Please like and comment what's been your favorite part so far. What have you been curious about? What they've said so far. Let me know in the comments. It will help guide other parts of the conversation. Now let's get back into this show.
Maybe this is something I want to avoid. Like I don't want to be with a white Christian. I don't want to be in this situation again. So I ran into that thought.
Okay.
But whenever I did like look out into the women that were available to me in Indiana, there aren't many Indians, so it's not like something that I focus on at all. It's just who's around me, who do I clash with, who am I most vibing with, I would say, and that was her. So.
I want to hear your view on like how it started, but you just made me think of I'm gonna add my Mormon stuff too, because we totally had the same belief system of they have to be in it. The only reason I would ever marry somebody outside of the faith is if it was to like especially in my religion, we practiced polygamy, and so I have 4 moms, and the women get married off, and so we could have used more, and so that's the only thing. Like I remember my parents and my uncles had this silly phrase of all women outside of the church were like these crazy people, or not even crazy. Like they would say, if you go and marry somebody outside, is she gonna pick up your shorts? I don't think so.
What I'm like, an odd thing to say.
I heard that dozens of times in my upbringing, and I'm like, wait, so I'm gonna marry somebody in my religion, so I'm marrying somebody that's like my mom? Like, it didn't make any sense to me. Like, I had always I'd always questioned if I wanted to marry somebody in my faith just because it was there. So anyway, going back to yours, again, you didn't always think you were going to marry outside the faith? Like, how did that happen?
That's a great question. I did not really think about it. I mean, we've talked about this before too. I've never had a type physically, or I never thought that I would have a type within faith as well. Like, oh, I have to marry a Christian guy. I mean, the idea was there, like your parents obviously tell you growing up, like, oh, like you'll meet a nice Christian man someday and like that's who you're going to marry. And like that's just kind of, especially like in Indiana, it's not super diverse. So most of the people that I was associating with and seeing and going to school with are white guys and mostly Christian or Catholic. Most Christian or Catholic, and not a lot of Indian people at that time. Mm-hmm. It's definitely diversified now since we've left where we went to school and everything. But yeah, no, I don't think I was even friends with like an Indian guy until like, I want to say 10th grade.
Interesting.
And so that I'd known who Suketu was at that time. I knew who he was when I was in 9th grade, so I was like 14, and like because he made this really viral
video.
You
were in the same school.
We did, yeah. Grew up in the same area and everything, so that was definitely nice that we had that in common as well. But yeah,
what was the video you did? It was viral.
So we are the ones who created this thing called a lip dub. So like we lip sync throughout the hallways and stuff. And so our high school was the first like
you haven't heard of it?
First like
what?
high school in America to go like viral, and then it started a trend of like lip dubs all around America.
So he's been famous for years, basically.
Before TikTok.
Yes.
Yeah, you did it before TikTok.
Yeah.
That's amazing. There was something I was going to come back to that you were saying. How did it happen then? Like, so was it just because he went viral, then you're like, I want to marry the guy?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Like, drop my panties for him,
exactly.
everything. Absolutely.
It's like, I don't care if he's brown, he's from a different religion, it doesn't matter. But he has followers. That is currency.
But he has a YouTube, and he's making videos. Absolutely, yeah, he's making coin. No, so I knew who he was. So he's a year older than me. So when I was in 9th grade, he was in 10th grade. And so I knew of him after that, and I ran track at the time, and I knew that he ran track after that. I didn't really know, to be fair, I didn't know who you were before you did the lip dub. I don't, like,
most people did.
Yeah, we say most people didn't. You became a popular hit after that, but I didn't know who he was, and then he made the lip dub, knew who he was, and then we followed each other on Instagram. I followed you first, and then you followed me back pretty quick, I might say.
Yes, I did.
And then after that, I mean, like, I just knew who he was for the next 2 years, and then I started managing the guy's cross-country team, and he was a runner, so he did track and cross-country. And so you just came up to me one random day. I had no idea I did know who you were, but I didn't really know who you were. You were coming up to me. I didn't put it together, but I was like, oh, I think after we had that talk, I was like, oh, this is that guy. Like, this is the guy. I know who this guy is, right? So you came up, you introduced yourself to me, and you're like, hey, are you that really weird girl from track? And I was
That's
like,
literally what your line was?
Yeah, I said that.
The first thing he ever said to me, hey, are you that weird girl from track? I was like, what are you talking about? And he goes, I'm just kidding. And I'm like, what the fuck? Who is this guy? Like, you insulted me the first thing you say to me. Yeah. Okay, like, that's
Did you learn
strange.
that from, like, what's his name? The pickup artist dude?
Probably.
No, but whenever I was a kid, I was a big fan of Kev Jumba and all these people on YouTube that were, like, huge back then. And all they thought, they were like, don't try and be a nice guy because they'll finish last. So whenever I talked,
guys finish last.
Exactly, it's a great song. But anyways, I always used to go up to girls and I guess
tease them.
I would tease them.
Insult.
That's that was my communication style, at least.
I mean, I guess it worked because it stuck with me, and then we just became best friends after that, and we started dating like 2 months after we officially met because we just spent all our time together.
So was it that you were noticing you're in it, you're friends, and then you're dating, you're like, wait a minute, we're in this thing, and now the conversation is religious wise, or what? Like, was there ever, like, how did that happen?
It honestly didn't even come to be until after we had our first argument, like 6 months into our relationship. We never talked about it.
What was the first argument?
He was jealous because I was at a track meet and I took a big group photo with a bunch of people from a different neighboring school that we were all friends with, and a guy put his arm around me. And he was mad about that.
I was pretty mad.
Such a high school thing. He was.
mad.
Oh my gosh, that was the first argument.
From that argument, I think that's when we started to have actual like discussions about, okay, like if we like I was a senior, so like I was going to college, and she was gonna be she was gonna go into her senior year of high school. It's like, okay, there's gonna be like this gap between us. So like, how
are you just gonna be hugging dudes when I'm gone?
Exactly.
Yeah, Hallie, what the hell?
Yeah, Hallie.
Like, how dare you touch another man?
You're gonna let somebody put their arm on you for a shoulder while I'm gone? Am I gonna open Instagram and see an arm?
I know, is that not such like a dumb high school thing? Like, you're so mature when you're in high school.
I don't want to be discounting. Like, I mean,
No, it was a stupid argument.
No, it was a dumb argument. I agree.
Oh, you agree?
Yeah, I agree now.
Okay.
Because like back then, I feel like I'm just.
What was it? Was it that it was like, oh, actually, I like this girl, and then it felt threatening, or what was it?
I think I've always been, so my previous relationship before Hallie, it was her, like I was not in this country at the time, like we were on vacation somewhere else, and then I found out she was like with a bunch of other.
Oh.
So it's
so
also
that was like
trust issues.
Trust issues.
Which,
yeah.
So then I was like, okay, if she did it, maybe Hallie will do it too, but.
You're guys,
think-
no,
yeah.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
chop that
No.
down. Okay, so then when you really start dating, like actually, is it even a genuine conversation of like, we can't because you're Hindu, you're Christian?
no. I mean, if anything on your side, yes.
First conversation we had is we can't because my parents won't allow it.
Okay, I want to talk about the parents.
And so that was the first thing. I was like, okay, I remember saying this and I felt so bad because I know how much it hurt her. But I said, why are we wasting our time now if we know it's not going to work out because of my parents? Like, I was like, okay. And then, she's taking it as, oh, this is all a waste of time. Like,
So why are we together at all?
So why are we together? So that's the first thing I said when I brought this topic up. And like that kind of.
Did you have a conversation with your parents and they're like,
Yes.
Oh.
So even like before Hallie, like I said, what would happen if I had a white girlfriend? And they were like, oh, we'd leave. We'd like go back to India. And so I was like, okay.
They're gonna rip you out of America?
No, they would leave. They would just leave.
And he would stay in
And I would
U.S.
stay-
in
anyway.
Indiana.
It was
Alone.
a very crazy conversation, right?
Okay.
And from that, I was just afraid. And then me and Hallie got together, and I was afraid to bring up the topic.
Behind their back?
Yeah.
So you were being rebellious?
Yeah.
For
sure.
3 years.
3 years.
They didn't know.
Ooh.
And when they did find out, they also had a similar reaction. Actually, no, they kind of knew what was happening.
They started to pick
Within a
up over
year.
the course of 3 years. Yeah.
Well, within the first year, and that's why we broke up, was because of that.
You broke up because of your parents.
Exactly.
Which is exactly what we preach nowadays, not to let happen. So.
Yeah, exactly. We always say, like, don't let your parents, like, judge what your future looks like.
That reminds me. So, in my church, we practice arranged marriages, which I know a lot of
happens a lot.
Happens a lot. I have friends that have done it, and it's like the parents that are arranging it, right?
Yes.
One of the most sad things is, so I never really had a serious girlfriend because that was like so taboo in my upbringing. Because I'm just waiting for, except instead of the parents arranging it, God does, and then we just wait for the church leaders to like place us together. And there was this girl and I that we were meeting together, and we snuck out once. She had a most important thing to say to me, and like I had lived 4 hours away from the headquarters of the church. The headquarters of the church is like northern Arizona, southern Utah, and I lived in Salt Lake City. But I travel there. We sneak out together, and she tells me, we can't be together. My dad's breaking us up because it's just not going the right way. Because you have to do it through the proper channel, like God to church leaders to you, and it couldn't be grassrootsy. So I kind of relate.
Okay. Yeah.
Except in reverse, because you're like, what was it? Did it feel like loyalty to them, or did you actually feel like you were doing something wrong?
That's a great question. I think for me, it was probably loyalty to them, because whenever they bring up this kind of topic, like they sacrificed their whole life to bring us here, right, to America.
just to marry a white girl.
Exactly.
Throw it all away.
You just
Exactly.
throw away your heritage. That's a huge thing we hear.
Think I took it as, oh, the white girl is the problem, but the truth was for them it was education. Like if I got into a relationship, education would come second. That was what's in their brain. Okay, so that's like always.
I don't know what you mean.
So like
Education would come second if you married a white girl?
if I was in a relationship at all
During school.
like during school.
Oh. So it was any relationship, not just Hallie?
It was a double whammy, really, because I'm white as well.
think
So it was
that's what
one
it was.
dating somebody and being in a relationship too.
You're a
She's white.
distraction.
That's way worse. Yeah.
It was actually like if I had been with an Indian girl, they would have been way less like strict about it for sure. Because I think it was like, okay, after he's done with his education, then he's going to marry this Indian girl, blah, blah, blah. And it's easy. But when you bring in Hallie into the picture, it's like, okay, they've never seen this in our family. They don't know how to handle the situation.
You're the first.
Exactly, yeah.
And he's the only boy.
I'm the only boy in my family. So it was a big deal because the boy is like the one thing that Indian parents want in their life is a boy, right?
And why is that?
It's because, well, at least where we are, we have a lot of, like, we have land in India, and usually that land is going to be continued on to the boy in the family. And so, like, I have to do a lot of things back in India that make sure that the land is doing okay and all that. So that is something
In
that,
India, you have land. Okay.
Yes. And so that's something that is pretty common, I would say, is
Yeah.
the boy in an Indian family is also the Indian parents' retirement plan in a way. That's how I've seen it, right?
So, in a way, both of you are veering off of what I like to call the script.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's got one.
Yeah.
If you're born in an Indian family, Christian family, fundamentalist Mormon family, we're born with the script. Now, how did you start to veer off the script? Or was it just like, we're getting married next week, you're invited? Like, what was that battle for you internally to choose your own authenticity and love ultimately, even though knowing it would disappoint perhaps the people you loved and respected most?
I think for me it was like being able to comfort my parents, saying just because I'm doing this doesn't mean it's going to end everything, right? I think it was like an end of the world situation for them. And the way I did that was with my sisters. Like, I got them on board first. I was like, okay, hey, I'm in a relationship. This is who she is. Hallie came with us to like many outings, like just me and my sisters and their husbands. And, you know, they got to know her a little bit. They were like, they really liked Hallie. And from that, got buy-in that way. And then one day, my sisters were in a room. My parents were in a room. My sisters brought up the fact saying, hey, you know, like when we have kids, like my sister said this to my parents, like when we have kids, do you expect our kids to be with Indian people as well? Right? Because like, you know, in America, it's just like everything it's a boiling pot, right?
Totally.
And then when they started to like grasp that concept, like it's going to eventually happen.
Yes.
Let your son just make the first move, make it easier for everybody else. That's kind of like how I interpreted the whole conversation. It was a long conversation. In short form, that's kind of what it boiled down to.
Okay, pretend Hallie's not here for a second. Was any part of that conversation like, Mom and Dad, my Riz is top tier. I'm going to get her in here and she's going to be Hindu, and like soften it that way?
That topic never came up with my parents.
Really?
Religion was never a problem with
Interesting.
my parents. And
You can come back to the conversation now.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I don't know, I kind of want to like talk about it with them just to be like, what's your opinion about it? Just so I can understand.
You haven't had a
it.
clear conversation yet?
No, not with my parents, because they just were like, okay, like in Hinduism, there's no way to convert to Hinduism.
Yeah.
It's just a lifestyle, I guess. That's
Yeah.
how I've always explained it to other people. It's like, if you do these things, you're technically Hindu. And it's
That
like,
is interesting how different faiths have different ways of doing it. Like
Yeah.
you do the practices, you're Hindu.
Yeah.
If you're born Jewish, whether you leave it or not, you're still Jewish. In a lot of Christian-like faiths, certainly yours, and definitely in fundamentalist Mormonism, there's like these grand sweeping gestures of like confess your sins and whatever, and then get baptized into the church, and you can actually get that revoked. You could technically stop being Hindu.
Yeah, if I just stop practicing.
If you stop practicing, but there are some people, like my friend, he says I can never not be Jewish.
Yes.
Because
Okay.
it's like culture and religion.
Yeah.
And so I find that fascinating, how there's different ways of approaching identity around your faith and, I don't know, who you are. It's interesting.
That's the other thing is like a lot of people come up to us and ask us about kids, right? And I always bring up the fact, like, even if we raise our kids Christian, they will be involved in the Hindu culture no matter what. Like, we have our traditional holidays that I will be celebrating with my family. We have our traditional, everything that we do has a religious binding to our culture, right? And so they're going to be knowledgeable about it. They're going to know what it is. But just because they grow up Christian doesn't mean they're not going to know what Hinduism is either, right? It's a very tough conversation that we've had, but once we had it, it's like, what's the big deal? It's exactly what we're doing right now. Like, I'll go to church with Hallie, she'll go to the temple with me. Like, what's the difference between that?
Well, and that's the beautiful thing about our relationship too, right? Is like, you are so different, quite literally so different from me. You grew up and came here from a completely different part of the world, and with that brings so many beautiful traditions and cultural aspects that I've never been exposed to. I live in the middle of Indiana, where the diversity was little to none at the time that I was growing up. Now it's different, but I was not involved in anything culturally different than my own culture, right? Like, I was just used to going to church on Sunday, celebrating Easter, Christmas, Thanksgiving, like all the normal holidays. Now I love how busy we are with not only like family events, but cultural events as well, where it's like every October I look forward to going to Garba, which is like dancing, where we go dancing for like 4 hours Friday and Saturday.
Hindu.
It's a Hindu tradition. It's like, you have a shrine in the middle, and then you dance in a circle. So it's still a religious thing, but to understand the fact that she understands it and respects it and still participates in it means a lot to me and my family, right? So there's so many aspects of it that I think it's different for sure.
Well, I would say too, that's like one of the biggest things that I think gave your parents comfort in being cool with us being together, is that just because I'm not Indian doesn't mean I don't care about your cultural traditions and your religion.
There's a respect.
There's respect. I get if somebody doesn't have that respect, then like, yeah, I get why you wouldn't want them to be integrated into the family. But I mean, it was unfair to be assumed that like, I don't want to be a part of your traditions. Like, I'm so excited. I'm pumped to be a part of everything you guys do. I love learning about it and hearing about it from your perspective, how you've experienced it over the years, wearing the beautiful clothing that I now have tons of because I've been to India. And I mean, it's been such a shift for me, and it's made my world so much more bright and colorful because I get to experience that for myself, but also how you've experienced it growing up. And to me, that's really special.
You're literally getting to become more cultured.
Yes.
Just by the spouse that you're with.
Yes.
Isn't that crazy?
It's amazing.
That's really cool. Hard left, hard right. What's been the most challenging aspect of it, would you say? And I'll dissect it see if it's actually that, or if all religion or all relationships have challenges. But for you, Hallie, like what's been the most difficult part about not being with, someone that's like this Christian in the same space, same faith, like that just thinks and believes differently?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, probably just overall the initial understanding of the differences, right? Like my whole life up until I had met Suketu, I thought I would just be with another white Christian guy, and like everything's the same. And we do this with your family. We do this with mine. We go to church on Sunday, like just like the normal stuff. But actually having the understanding that there are different people in the world. Yeah. That is such a huge, you're like, wow, okay, there are so many other cultures to be aware of. There's so many other things that are going on, especially like Hindu culture, like in where you're from too, like it is so vastly different from anything I've ever known. So I think just overall the understanding and being acclimated into that and being brought into it as well, because I'm not going to lie, there were some people that were not super happy about it.
In your family?
Not in my family. It was a little bit of a judgment thing, as learning about all the cultural aspects and religious aspects while being brought in and getting to know your parents, for example, which now we're on amazing terms. However, it was hard to feel wanted and accepted because I was afraid.
Yeah, I think a big concern was like language barrier, because like my parents speak English. They speak English to me very well, but a lot of people are like, oh, like how are they going to understand? Like how do they communicate with Hallie and all this stuff? And I think that was like a lot, like just random people in my family would bring that like topic up, like, you know, like is she going to learn Gujarati? Is she going to learn all these things to be able to communicate better? Which I think was never a problem because I know my parents very well, and they have jobs, they work with people who speak English. So it's like I never saw that as a problem, but I think that topic came up quite a few times.
I think with that, just the overall biggest challenge probably was us being able to figure that out as a couple, that we are different and how are we going to make this work? Because obviously now I can sit here and act like, oh, it was so easy that we talked about it and we communicated. It's not easy. It's very hard coming from two different spaces and being open-minded about that on both sides and understanding there's give and take with each side, right? Yeah. So that was the biggest challenge, is still trying to love each other and be there for each other and be each other's number one supporter, but also like we are different. And if we're going to take this thing seriously and get married and have kids someday, like we need to figure some things out. We can't just go with the flow our whole lives. Yeah,
there's just I've kind of touched on it earlier, and I want to hear what for you, Saketu, what was the most difficult part of it for you. But the thing that the fact that you're in relationship, the thing that I find so awesome and beautiful is just from the starting point. I think a lot of people enter relationships with a lot of faulty assumptions, especially if they're in the same circle. If they're in the same circle, they start to think that their way of the world is the way of the world. They think that's how the world is. And when you're with somebody that you know is different, looks different from a different space, you have to enter it with, how are you viewing this? How are you interpreting this? How is it through your lens? This is how it is for me. And then you can find some middle ground with that by saying, okay, this is how I'm viewing it, and maybe based on my experience and my upbringing, this is why I see it this way, instead of this misconception that I see a lot of people make, certainly in what I've seen in my family sometimes, is like, if it's all the same, you have this assumption like, oh, this is the way the world is, and then people don't communicate and they're talking past each other. And it's the same thing, like even in the same religion, that's the irony in all this, even in the same religion, you're still two very different people with two very different worldviews. And you two, in a way, are like highlighting that and showing that if you work through it, you can still find these beautiful common connections that you have.
Absolutely.
Saketu, how was it for you? Like in terms of like the most difficult part? Like what are, if any, was it the discipline? Like once you had that conversation with your parents, then that was the biggest thing, or? I
think for me the most difficult part was convincing my parents. I was never scared to be in a relationship with somebody with a different religion, didn't look like me, whatever it may be. Like that was never scary to me, because I was like, I know myself, I can make this work for sure.
Was there ever, a big part of relationships, just to play devil's advocate on you guys a little, a big part of relationships, for me, and I think many people, is feeling understood. And so there are some people that will say, that's why, I'll just say what I've seen online. That's why if you're black, you got to stay with black community. If you're a Mormon, you got to stay with Mormon. If you're Christian, you got to stay with Christians. Just so people understand the struggle and they can relate to you. Was that ever a worry that you're like, would the person not understand me or get me because of we're in a different struggle, I suppose? Was that ever a thing? And if not, maybe it wasn't. Why not?
For me, it seems like that was not as much of a struggle because I never viewed it as, oh, if this person isn't like me, then they're not going to know my struggles. I've always been pretty good at, like, I think communicating and figuring it out that way.
Why were you not worried about that? Because again, I'm just playing devil's advocate on you. Don't people have to have lived it to really empathize with it, or no?
I don't think so. This is my own opinion, of course, but like I feel like because for me the struggles that I had was coming to America in a predominantly white area and making myself feel, everybody around me making myself feel that I was the oddball out, right? When truly, like, all I was trying to do is just live like everybody else. And that was the one thing I guess other people didn't understand. For example, Hallie probably didn't go through that. Like, she didn't go through that like I did, right? But that's not the first thing that came to my mind. Like, oh, because she didn't go through that, then she's not going to know the struggle. I think I always knew, like, that people who go through the struggle, like, it's acknowledged. Like, people know about it. They just might not go through that exact experience.
Yes.
But they know about it, right? And I'm not going to discount somebody else just because they didn't go through the exact same. Actually, I don't want them to go through the exact same thing I did. So that's kind of how I see it.
Did you ever worry about somebody not being able to relate to you if they didn't live in the exact same way? Or how did you find that common ground of empathy? Do you see what I'm asking?
Yeah, I do. I'm going to be honest. I don't know that I ever really thought about that because I'm very fortunate, very privileged to have lived a very good life. Like, I really, truly didn't have any struggles. I mean, my family struggled with money on and off. We had some family issues, some health issues, some, not anything crazy.
Because what I'm asking is, like, the worry, it's a very individual thing of, like, if you're going to be with somebody, they need to get you. They need to understand you. Did you feel like that immediately, that he got you, or at least wanted to?
Honestly, odd enough, yes, I did feel that way. And I say this all the time because, I mean, like, when you're in high school, oh, I want to be in a relationship. Oh, I want a boyfriend. Well, all the guys that I knew were dicks, and I didn't like any of them, and I had nothing in common with them. The second that I started hanging out with him, becoming friends with him, he literally kicked somebody out of his car so that he could start driving me to practice, like our cross-country practice, so he could hang out with me. And I was like, if he keeps doing this and, like, he offers to pick me up and take me to school, and conversations between us are just so easy, and I talk to him for hours at a time. If it's this easy, and if it's like, if I feel just this excited to see him, to talk to him, it was never hard getting acclimated with each other. I mean, he always wanted to know so much about me. He always asked me so many questions about me.
That's another inherent thing that I find so fascinating with this. Yeah. That is, it's this inherent curiosity.
He's the most curious person I know. He wanted to know all about me. Literally, like, the first question, he had.
But if you're in the same bubble all the time, you know it. You know, like. Again, where I came from, most everybody's in the same square mile, so you can't be like, hey, where did you grow up? Where did you go to church? Like, it's the same. So there's not a lot of conversation, and there's so much fun and connection just having that dialogue, and that's something that you guys have.
Well, the crazy thing is that, yes, I mean, we did grow up in the same area, and we knew a lot of the same people.
Still differently.
Very different, and two very different people, might I add. So very different. We had very different relationships to where we lived and who we are, and just in general, we are very different people. And so I still feel like I learn things about you all the time. It's like we just always were so curious to know more about each other. And from that, feeling that way and like, wow, I want to know more about this guy. I care about him. I loved learning about him, and we just were able to click so fast.
I think to make a relationship like this work, you have to be curious. You also have to have the respect, but with that curiosity, you are willing to learn new things, right? You're willing to put your own thoughts and beliefs on the side to learn without any judgment. And then that is kind of, I think that's like what really brought us closer together, because I was so interested in her and figuring out how
we might have to start calling you Jay Shetty, because that's actually really good relationship advice. Just being curious about someone.
Yeah.
Yep.
And wanting to set something aside so that you can move forward in the relationship. On this note, because we're more in the realm of, because we've talked so much about differences and worrying about that, but where are the commonalities? Like, where, from your perspective, what are the things you're like, oh, I jive with that? And maybe it's a compliment to a difference, but what are some of the things that you see is in alignment, even though you're different?
I think the commonalities that I've seen between me and Hallie is that when we first started dating, we both had more of a growth mindset. So just because I questioned something, Hallie would also question it. Like it wasn't just me doing the questioning. I know she wasn't as aggressive with the questioning. I think I was always like digging as deep as I could. But because we questioned each other so much, that was a big common point that we shared. And then other than that, we also just had a lot of hobbies that we shared together.
You both run.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What else?
We're both into I mean, you were into videography and making YouTube videos at the time, but we were both into photography together. We were both, like the running, the track and cross country. So that was a huge, when you're in school, if you do sports together, you spend all your time together, right?
That's really freaking cool, actually.
We went to the same university. We have his S. Patel Productions, his business. We do that together as photo and video.
Yeah.
So we work together in that aspect. We work at the same corporate company together. So we literally ride to work together every single day. Like we are together 24/7.
It's like,
yes.
And also, I think it also matters like how your knowledge base is too. So like we're both in the STEM field, right? So we both went through like similar classes. So when it comes to like
we cried about it together. Yeah.
Our like level of education or our level of thought, we're able to have like that same deep level of thought, I think.
And then conversation to go along with that.
So it's not like if I have a discussion, she's not able to like think about it. Or if she has a discussion with me, I'm not able to think about it. We're both on like the same page most of the time.
Well, and a couple other things, just along those lines, a couple other things I want to mention. Another thing to simplify is we have the same sense of humor, like stupid humor. That's something that we bonded over right away. We love stupid parody movies. We love just like, we have the same, I mean, obviously, yes, we spend all our time together. We have these inside jokes, but truly we are like, we're like each other, but like you're a man, I'm a woman.
This is what I love because it just shows that human goes deeper than, I mean, no disrespect for your faith. I'm not trying to disrespect it all, but it goes deeper than religion.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
It goes deeper than a skin color. It goes deeper. Like we have these commonalities and you can I find that so funny and beautiful that you can come from very different cultures and still be like, okay, we laugh about the same type of thing. Our brains are attracted to a similar type of thing. We want to question, we want to be curious. That's just really interesting to me.
Yeah, it is very interesting. I've always said like we're the same person, but like you're a guy, I'm a girl. And I want to point out one other thing that I think helped me to vibe with him right away is that he has 3 older sisters, right? So like he was always
How did 3 older sisters help with the vibing?
He's like a softer, gentler person. He's not like a bro. Like, you know what I mean?
They like beat you into submission.
Like, I remember like, and this is going to sound really stupid, but I remember like when we were first dating, like I was on my period or something and I was like, oh my God, should I even like talk about that? And you're like, I literally don't care. Like, because he's like, I have 3 older sisters. Like I've seen it all. Like, you're just such a good guy, and that just made me feel so much more comfortable around him too. Yeah,
that's something like as I started dating, because I didn't start, this is a whole other conversation, but I didn't start dating till I was 30, because until after I was 30, like 31, because I was because I was in the church. I had an arranged marriage, so I had that, but didn't date, and then divorced, left the religion, and then started dating, and I also have like 20 sisters. And so
that's crazy.
So when people would ask, like I had that a couple of times where some women would say something, but guys don't want to hear about that. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, I've been around periods my whole life.
Yeah.
Like, it's no big deal. Like just things like that. I find that interesting.
1 second. I do have to go to the bathroom.
Okay, we'll do it.
All right, now we can talk shit about him that he's gone.
Exactly. The cameras have not stopped rolling. The thing that there's like a theme I've noticed with this, that I think is so helpful. I mean, there's a lot of things that are inspiring about yours and Sakatu's relationship, like where it can, there's so many things in the world that divide. Like the internet created a lot of silos, because if people look and act and think the same way, you could go find other silos that look and think and act that way. But we have this tendency. So I just think it's cool that you guys are kind of a silo breaker or a bridge maker. But the thing that I also think is interesting is what you're really doing is like leaning into your authenticity in a way, because you're not changing each other. I find that interesting, because like when I first saw you guys' content, there was a piece of me that was like, okay, yeah, that one was raised the other way, one was raised this way, one was raised that way, and now they've I don't know, stopped being religious or whatever, and so that's why it works. But there's not that. Like, I find it so interesting that you're like, this is me, this is what matters to me, and the other person saying, this is me, this is what matters to me, and you're still making that work.
Yeah, and that's so interesting that you
world
have that
needs
assumption, because I've not heard that before. I've not
Which
heard
one?
people that like, oh, well, they must not be religious because they're still together and they're making it work. Like, that's so interesting.
It's probably just because I don't see it very often.
Yeah.
The thing we were saying, we're talking shit when you went in, but but after that, the internet today, this is why I'm so glad this conversation is happening, this is a conversation that needed more in the internet, because the internet created a lot of what could be beautiful, connecting people together. But what it seems to have also done with social media and everything is it bunches the same things together. It creates these silos where people that think and look the same way are they're watching the same type of content. They're reinforcing that content. But what you two are doing is coming at it like with different perspectives, and it still works. Like, I don't know, there's just something beautiful about that to me.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more that the internet and the world needs more of that, because people love to hate on what they don't understand. So that's such a huge thing that we've seen in our relationship. I mean, literally, I wish I had my phone.
In your comments.
Yeah, I wish I could scroll through and show you like the comments,
It's
like my DMs, people that flood, especially on TikTok and Reels. People are brutal, and our friends will like go to bat for us, and they're like, "Oh yeah, like I'm gonna take down this internet troll," but like 50 more come at them. It's like just a never ending. It's like you can't engage with them because you're never gonna win.
You two are breaking people's brains.
Yeah, it's people can't handle it. It's
me,
crazy.
Though I feel like it would break my brain to think about the fact that you're gonna make somebody else convert to something that they don't even believe in. You know?
Yeah,
that breaks my brain. Like, why would you want that?
That's the obvious thing with me with the whole, like, I figured you'd find your own thing, and that's why, like, at the end of the day, the thing that's obvious is people are going to do their thing. But what I love is you can do your thing, you can be different, and it can still be a relationship. Like, it can still work. Yeah. And in fact, that's what, whether you're biracial or not, that's what people need to make a relationship work.
Exactly. No, I agree.
You have your traditions, obviously. You have your traditions. Have you guys thought of like half-past chai traditions, like things that are yours? Because I do find that also beautiful, where you're like sharing, or is it just that this is what my family brings, this is what my family brings, and then you share in that? Or do you think along the way you would, I don't know, come up with your own traditions?
I think there are potential spots to come up with our own traditions, for sure. But I don't think we've gotten to a point where we know what that could be.
Like you're both runners?
Exactly.
Maybe your family runs every Thanksgiving or something?
Yeah.
That would be a dream.
I know,
I love that. But no, I do agree. There are definitely things that can join in a way. Like something that I've always loved in something that we do in our culture is this thing called like Brother's Day or Sister's Day, right? And so what happens on those days is like my sisters will cook food, and I will bring them a gift, and whatever that might be. And so because of that, like that's not coherently, to me, that's not like religious, more so culture ish. And so like that's just a tradition thing that we do in my family. It is a religious holiday technically, but like we've always done it. I've always seen it as just a traditional thing. And like things like that I really enjoy, and I want to incorporate that kind of stuff into our family eventually someday, right? So
what's the farthest you guys go? Like, are you guys short distance runners or longer distance runners?
Well, it used to be shorter distance. So in high school, we would run the 400 and 800. Currently, as of now, we are training for a half marathon in November. And then the goal is to run a full in New York City next year.
Dude, I want to do the marathon, like the actual.
Yes. It's my dream.
Are you guys actually if you guys run the New York City Marathon, are you trying to qualify by your speed?
I don't think I could. She might be able to.
You're that fast? You're faster than Saketu?
Yeah.
Holy shit, what's your time?
Well, I've never run a marathon before, ever.
I'm running one in October.
Really? Which one?
Southern Utah.
Okay.
Yeah. I've done a couple.
Okay.
In fact, who was I talking to? I was talking to somebody this week about, like, I think pretty sure it was when we were hanging out. Like, my first ever race was an ultra. So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, she can hit probably right now. She can probably hit like 7:30 pace. But to qualify here, I think it's 7:20 pace as a woman.
So the issue that I'm struggling with is time. So I didn't decide that I wanted to do this. Like, I think if I wanted to qualify for the New York City Marathon, I would have had to start training quite some time ago. I really only started back in November. So my goal, I just wanted to start running half marathons and then build up to a full marathon. So I want to run like at least 2 or 3 half marathons before I run a full marathon, because that would be quite the shock to your system. And I'm trying to run, for a half marathon, I'd like to run under 1:31, which I think is like 7-minute pace.
Have you ever been here during a marathon?
No.
Dude, it is the best. It is like an annual holiday. Everybody gets together, and it is the... I know you guys are you're not in New York yet, but just how you two are, like you're like New York in your blood. Because New York is your relationship.
Yeah.
The blending of cultures. On one side, you can find like the best Mexican food, the best Italian food. You can go down to Chinatown. Like, it is a mesh of like the best parts of what makes humans humans. And so, if you need any extra like nudging, like, you guys are kind of already pre-made.
I don't think we need any extra nudging, to be honest.
I mean, the thought is there. The thought has been there for quite some time.
Yeah.
The first time we ever came to New York was actually in September 2023. And then after that, my life changed. I'm pretty sure yours did too. We just couldn't stop thinking about it. And it's just been there. Every single time I think about a trip, I would think New York, New York, New York. That's where I want to go. And to your point of it being like a melting pot of so many different cultures and people and communities, I think that's why we vibe with it so much. It's such an amazing place.
I think you are New York, as strange as it is.
Yeah.
Like, this is a realization I've recently had. Because, I mean, I still think you probably got to put in your time, because some people are like, you got to be for a time. But, like, I like this idea of, like, the way I am is, like, growing up is what is a New Yorker. Like, I prefer honesty over fluff. I'd rather somebody tell me, I fucking hate your guts, but I respect that you made that shot or something. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whatever the fuck. Then just say something nice, and then I hear later that they're trashing me behind my back. Like,
right.
I don't like that. Even something silly as like my siblings would always judge me for walking too fast. And now,
well,
like,
you're a runner,
it's
so
like it fits perfectly. I've actually never identified as a runner, interestingly enough.
Oh,
even though
really?
Yes, even though I've done these things, because it's been like these just personal challenges of like, can I run 52 miles? I wonder. Let's see.
Oh, and you did.
And then I did, and I'm running 6 miles tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
If you guys want to run 6 miles tomorrow morning before your flight.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, we could talk about it off air. But Saketu,
Yes.
when you look at the teenage you, what are you most proud of?
Teenage me, wow. I would be most proud of the fact that I respected the fact that my parents did so much to bring me here, but I didn't let them control every aspect of my life. I think that's a big thing that even though they did so much, I respected. I would never be here without them, but that does not mean that they get to tell me how the rest of my life is.
Yeah. And that's a big deal, especially if you really love them.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we've had a 10 times better relationship since I've done that.
Okay, Hallie, I got one for you.
Mm-hmm.
In the last 5-ish years, what have you done that has built the most self-respect for yourself?
Oh, I was prepared for you to ask me that last question. I had a great answer. I think the biggest thing, and it's not even been in the last 5 years, it's something that I'm really still understanding about myself today, is one of my coworkers has said this line to me so many times, but it's really the truth in a lot of different ways. Nothing really matters as much as you think it does.
Mm-hmm.
And that can come in the way of people don't really care as much as you think they do. Like, if you say something stupid, forget about it because they're not going to care in 2 days, 2 weeks, whatever. It can come in many different forms. And like, you think you've embarrassed yourself. You think you've done something stupid. You think you put something out there that you shouldn't have. People don't care. And realistically, nothing is ever as deep to make that big a deal out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not worth upsetting yourself or hurting yourself or putting yourself down. And I think that's been the biggest thing, because
There's a freedom in that.
Yes, it is freeing. Absolutely. And it's a good way. Yeah, that's good that you said that, because it can weigh on you. It can put you down. It can make you sad. I mean, it can make you struggle with already some of the issues that you have. And so feeling that freedom, that aspect of not caring as much, because I went through a period of my life where I didn't care at all. And then I did care too much. And now I'm like, fuck it, I don't care. Like, I'm here for a good time. I'm here for a good time, not a long time. Why should I care about what anybody thinks or says? Or even I apply that in our relationship.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm pissed off about something, I'll think about it. And that's why I take time. Because I'm like, really, does this matter as much as I think it does? Do I want to start an argument with him we're just going to go in circles? Is it pointless? Or is it something that's actually important to me that we need to discuss?
Since you had a good answer for it, I'm going to go back to it. Okay, when you look at the teenage you, what are you most proud of?
That I didn't care about anything.
Okay.
I did not. See, like I said, I went through a period of not caring, then caring way too much. And then in the last year or 2 years, I've started to not care anymore, because it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Like, nothing
and
matters.
That's something you're proud of, and not being so attached to it.
Yeah, because I mean, I had people bully me throughout school, and like obviously that hurt a little bit, and I cared about the friends that I had, but as far as like appearance wise, I didn't obsess over how I looked. And there was a period of time where I was like, oh my gosh, I have to be in amazing shape, like especially getting ready for our wedding. It's just like, people say sweating for the wedding, like you really start to adapt that mindset of like, I have to look perfect on my wedding day. Nobody gives a fuck. I mean, like, I care because I look back at the pictures and video.
I was going to say, she's the only girl that I ever met who I said this in like a podcast episode. I got a lot of hate for it.
It's the most viral clip.
It is.
Like
said,
10 million views.
The one thing that I love about Hallie, the thing that first thing I noticed, she didn't care about the way she looked. Like, she didn't wear makeup all the time.
I didn't, and I was happy.
Who edited that?
It was me.
Great editing on that video. Like, and you have the best faces, Hallie.
I know.
Like, on that. Oh, that was great.
Yeah.
But you're saying that actually was an attractive thing to you, just like the more personality versus just being over obsessed.
Yes,
100%.
absolutely. And I knew that's what you meant in the clip, but at the same time I was like, okay, I have to be expressive because this is going to get views of like, the whole social media content thing, but that's another story. But anyways, just to continue on that.
But you still, as a woman, you care somewhat about how you look. And so, okay.
I do definitely more
over
so
time.
now. Yeah, over time it's grown. But back in high school, I played sports all the time. I really just cared about sports and hanging out with my friends and the people that I cared about, and nothing else mattered to me. And then in college, like obviously career, education, those things really start to get heavy, and you lose all your friends. And I was living at home, so I didn't feel like I was getting the college experience, and I really started to care a lot more about things that just were weighing me down and really hurt me, and I struggled a lot with those kinds of things. And then I'm in this stage now where like, you know what, my job makes me miserable, fuck it, like I need to do something about it. I'm tired of being unhappy about it. It's like that kind of mindset. It's freeing
taking
because
ownership for it.
Yeah. And like, I can have control over some situations. That's the biggest thing too, is realizing sometimes you can have control over certain situations, others you can't. And if you can't, then forget about it. If you can do something about it, do something about it.
Amen.
Yeah.
Okay, for you, It's okay too. What is something that either annoys you about your relationship, and then genuinely, what is one of your favorite things about this relationship?
The annoying.
You have to do the
I
same
know,
thing.
I'm
Okay.
processing
I think the
things.
annoying thing is how competitive we are.
Okay.
We're very competitive, and it can get annoying.
She kicks your ass, bro.
Yeah.
And running.
Yeah.
How can you accept that?
It's like I've always been the faster one. Now she's better than me in that. And like even like our content creation, like it can get annoying because we are always like, okay, we got to do this. We got to make content here. We got to make content here. And then because we are so competitive and trying to grow both our channels, trying to grow our conjoined channel, it can get annoying sometimes.
Yeah, because we're always like, okay, how many views did you get on this? And oh, I got this on this, but you didn't get that many comments, and like that sort of thing. It can get a little annoying at times.
I think that's the one.
But you're
thing.
the girl. A girl always does better on content.
Yeah, he's like, but you're hot. Like everybody likes to watch your stuff. Nobody likes to watch my stuff.
You just need to flash people.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's okay too. Don't say the good thing yet. We'll stay on the annoying thing. So, what is one of your most annoying things for you, Hallie, in this relationship?
So, I mean, it's hard to pick. There are so many. No, I'm just kidding. I will say, we do, which we touched on this a little bit earlier, is that we do everything together. That can be challenging. Not going to sugarcoat the fact that it's had its challenges. Naturally, when you do everything with someone, you start to get a little tired of them. And I mean, which again, we're married and we live together, so that's one. We do our podcast together, and so we like we're having this conversation here. That can be challenging too, especially when we're irritated at each other. There'll be sometimes that we have to cut, and we're like, "Oh, I can't believe you said that," or like that sort of thing. So like, I think the most annoying thing is that we do everything together, but at the end of the day, we're a married couple, and we love each other. So we need to stop treating each other like business partners and actually act like, you know, the married couple that we are, because we do love each other, and we struggle sometimes to show that, especially on social media.
Is it like is the struggle also, do you guys ever struggle with finding the line of like professional mode versus like we're a married couple, let's love each other mode?
Because it's hard to turn the professional mode off.
Yeah.
It's very hard to turn that off.
I think I asked you this the other night, I can't remember your answer. Do you guys know Alex Hermosi and Layla Hermosi?
I know the names.
Okay. They're kind of online business people, but something that I find interesting with their relationship, because they talk about their relationship a little bit online, is with this problem, because they also work together. They do a lot of things together. But what they learned is sometimes connection is actually best when there's been space between people.
Yes.
So they will deliberately, through the way they structure their days in life, make sure they're spending some time apart. Even if it's like, this is your time, this is my time. And and then you come together at the end of the day and like share, and they talk about like that, like that's what makes a relationship good, is the novelty and the difference. And so they have it pre-built in. And I just find that interesting.
Well, yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because when we come together at the end of the day, we don't have anything new to talk about. We've already experienced everything together for the most part. And we also come from two very different, like, loving environments. I got too much love growing up. He got not enough. So he's always seeking it for me. So like when we were always doing stuff together, I'll be like, okay, can I get some space? Like, can I go off on my own and read? And he's like, no, let me come with you. And I'm like, it's okay, dude, please. Like, no, I need some time. Like, I grew up in an environment with too much love, and sometimes I really just need my space. And then you're like, no, but I really want that love and I need that. And like, he really didn't get like a lot of like sweet kinds of love growing up.
Yeah, my parents had 3 other girls to take care of, so that was it was very hard.
By the time the boy came around,
exactly.
Like,
I think the one thing I'd say to what she just said was, when it comes to being sane in our relationship, my corporate job actually helps with that a lot. I'm a consultant, so I travel every week. So that separation time, we hate it. We absolutely hate being separated that long, but it is so good for us, because I'll be gone for like 2-3 days sometimes, and then when I come back, we get to talk about everything. We get to like figure things out. We're way more level-headed, like so level-headed. It's kind of scary. And so it there's something to say to that. Like, it is important.
Well, but
for sure.
So yes, with the traveling, it's a good thing, but we both are like sick to our stomachs that like a day that he has to travel. Like I realize that I like my time alone, but thinking of you going somewhere without me, I'm like, wait, I need to go with you too. Like we almost
What if what if a girl puts her arm
Yeah.
around him on like a corporate photo?
See, I know, right? See, like that's the thing, that the beautiful thing that's our relationship has evolved in that way is that I was never jealous. Then I was jealous because you were jealous, and then I'm like, I don't care. Like I really don't care. Like I know we love each other at the end of the day. If you wanted to leave me, you would.
Wow.
Exactly. That's a very. I think me and
Very
her
mature.
both said that.
Okay. What's one of your favorite things? It doesn't have to be the favorite. It can just be what's the first thing that pops in your head. Like what's one of your favorite parts of, especially the uniqueness of the relationship.
My favorite part of the relationship is that we are both on the same page of what we want with our goals. That's my favorite part for sure. Like we do
That's
not
so important.
we want to build our own thing at some point in the future. We want to be our own bosses. And if I was with somebody who didn't have that same mindset, I don't know what would
Okay. Pause. I want to hear your answer. Okay,
Yes.
here's my rant. Because this is something that I think is not talked about enough in relationships. In fact, my unpopular opinion on relationships is people shouldn't get in a relationship for the sake of getting in a relationship. In fact, there needs to be these other things that you guys have, like, oh, we notice we have some similar values, we have similar interests, and that's another one. We are going in the same direction, or we have similar goals. Like, to me, that is what you build a relationship around. And so,
Not just hookup culture, yeah. But people say, oh, well, you just want to date to marry. Like, that's so boring. You don't want to date around. And then that's a whole other discussion.
Sure.
Because we're the only people we've really ever dated and been with, ever.
But you found something, but you're like you said, you found something like we're so similar, and you can build a relationship around that. You can build a relationship with having similar goals. And that's, I can see that why that's one of your favorite things. I just think that's so huge. Because there's so many people that they could be in the same relation or the same religion. They could even have, I don't know, a few things that are very similar about each other, or they just enjoyed the sex, but they're going in very different directions with their goals, and they have very different hobbies and stuff like that. And that is just going to ultimately break down. Love ain't enough. There needs to be, it needs to make sense in some way also, is my, again, unpopular opinion.
No, I think it's a great opinion. I think it's a popular opinion, but other people might not think that way.
Yeah,
That's how I view things.
Yeah, I was swayed by Disney just like anybody else, in like in the movies in Hollywood, and like that love is like a very beautiful thing, and it is like love is like it. But for longevity, to me, there needs to, like, the relationship also needs to have things about, oh, this makes sense. We make sense because we have similar things we're going somewhere similar. We have similar views of where we're going, and that to me is what really can make things click.
Well, yeah, that was huge that we built our friendship before we started dating.
Yeah.
I mean, we just became each other's best friends, basically. And just to segue, I assume you're going to ask me the same question.
I'm going to ask you. So what is your favorite part of the relationship?
So I have three things that'll kind of tie into one. But number one, we are best friends before anything else. I mean, I think that it was just so easy to build up our relationship because we were best friends. I mean, we've always taken such pride in that too. And whenever people ask me, oh, like, who's your best friend? Like, blah, 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 you know, my husband. But before that, before we were even married or engaged or dating, he started to become my best friend. But in a guy version, obviously I have girl best friends, but we started to do everything together. We clicked right away. Like, everything was easy. We just have the same mindset on things, which we said many, many times already. But just sharing again, and like even having the stupid humor, you know, aspect of our relationship is like, we were just able to do things together and it was easy. So there's that. We're best friends. We're really good teammates. We work really well on a team, even though I complained just a few minutes ago about how hard it can be to work together. And it is. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. But we love doing it together too. I wouldn't have it any other way. I love being able to do the things that we do in our life together. And like on this trip, we're traveling to New York, and like we have weddings in the next few weeks that, you know, sometimes those suck doing weddings for like 8-10 hours a day, but at least we get to be together.
Yeah.
I enjoy and value that time, and we get to experience things together, and I get to be your video assistant. Like I don't have to do the photography, which is nice, but you know, I get to learn things and we get to hang out and we work well together. We've developed a really good communication style and being able to like look at each other and just like know certain things, like whether it be in the podcasting realm or like if we're doing an event or whatever it may be. Lastly, probably one of my favorite things about our relationship is that he's brought me into the cultural aspect of like his Indian culture, right? Like I've gotten to experience, obviously, before I was really involved in it, I got to hear a lot about it from his perspective, right? It's one thing to hear it versus to experience it. So I actually got to go to India last year, buy all kinds of dresses, you know, like experience what it's like to live in his parents' house in India and like see the things that he grew up seeing and see your family tractor that you had for years. And like just it's so cool. It's so amazing because again, if like you were just a white guy that lived in the US, like, oh, I'd meet your family that maybe lived here or somewhere else, but like you have family all over the world.
Yeah.
I've been able to meet so many people, do so many cool things, travel places.
You have
And
a pretty big family?
I have a pretty big family. Yes. Yes, for sure. Like
Not bigger than mine.
yeah, probably not.
Maybe not. Yeah. I don't think it's that big. My immediate family is like
Yours is probably spread out more geographically, though. That's the interesting thing.
Yeah.
Is I have a massive family, but they're still all like pretty well confined in the same area.
Yeah.
for sure.
So
That's really beautiful. Now having this whole conversation, I'm no longer confused at all. Like I get why you guys are a thing, why you guys are in relationship together.
I'm glad that it makes sense.
I
It
know.
makes
I'm
so
happy that it
goddamn much
does
sense.
too. Yeah, this has been great.
As I've gone deeper with it, and I might have said it when you were in transition with P and whatever, but I'll say it again. The thing that I noticed that I really like is, in a way, there's an authenticity that each of you are bringing to this relationship, because you're not compromising what matters to you just to appease the other person, but in that authenticity there's so much beauty that can emerge. You can learn from each other, you can share different cultures and that sort of thing. And we haven't said it, but like love, it's also like, you know, who gets to judge like who's going to be in love, no matter what they look like, what the religion is. And I don't know, I think it's a beautiful thing. I think this is literally something that needs to be shared. More people need to watch your podcast, which, by the way, what's the best way to find your podcast?
Half Past Shy on
Half Past Shy everywhere?
all platforms. Yeah.
All platforms.
Yes.
Yeah, we need, like, go check out their stuff. Like, we need a world that's more human, less divisive, showing that you can look different, be different, but actually still find all this beautiful, rich commonality that you can go with. So
Absolutely.
I 100% agree. Just like our tagline says, a blend of two cultures.
Yeah.
And maybe that's going to be the final point, because I was going to say, any final message, like what's a message that you hope to convey to people that watch your content for this podcast or anybody else? Like, what's a message that you want to share with the world that maybe can help other people?
Yeah, I think just one point that you have made a few times throughout this is that there's so much more than just what you see externally or what you practice, whatever religion you are, what culture you come from, like who you are as a person. There's so much more common ground that if you just dig a little deeper and take the time and have the open mind to get to know people, you can find out really a lot about who they are and figure out who they are as a person and how you can connect with them. I mean, if you don't vibe with them, whatever, but if you do, just it's so important to realize that there's so much more than what the world makes us out to be.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Just be curious. Try and figure out, if you haven't questioned yourself, if you haven't questioned who you are, how you got to where you are, and the people around you, if you don't question that, I feel like you're missing out on so much of the world.
You are preaching my gospel now, and I love that. Yeah, because we come from very different places, and that's also what I believe in. Oh, wait, you guys don't drink very much, like at all, right?
No.
Question: have you ever tried kava?
What is
Kava.
that? It sounds fun. I
Are
don't
you
know.
guys open to try something new?
What is it?
It's just a root. It's all natural.
oh,
root?
kava.
Oh,
I've heard of
Yes.
it.
what? Like what does it? What is it?
It's like alcohol's like so yesterday. It's like for sober people. Would you be opposed to trying kava for the first time in New York City?
Is it like gonna make me
It's
trip
gonna
out? Like what is
It makes you feel a little interesting. Like there's like a tingling in your mouth, but it's not alcoholic. It's totally good for you. It tastes like shit, but it's a fun
I
experience.
don't know.
She's not gonna like shit, but like I
want to see Suketu
I'll
try it.
sip it, but she won't try
Is it
shit.
like a sippable thing or is it like a chewable thing?
Are we open to at least go look and see if there's someone over
Sure,
there?
absolutely,
Okay,
yeah.
we're gonna go to Kava Sutra. Let's go try it out. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe. It helps the algorithm know that okay, this is a new show that needs to be out there more. So go subscribe to their channel. Their stuff is also in the description below if you want to check them out. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for commenting. I read every single comment. So thank you so much again, and I'll see you on the next episode. Peace.